Hi, everybody. This is Lowell, and we're talking about how to build or how to start a music school. And in this section, we're talking about core competencies that every musician and school should teach, in my opinion. And so, the in this section, we're talking about basically the three different types of learning: visual, oral, and kinesthetic. And speaking of visual, and the combination of visual and oral is what happened when I was studying at Juilliard in a particular class that was called solfege or ear training. And the instructor actually had studied with Nadia Boulanger and had come out of the Longy type of school of training in Paris, France. And so the idea behind that is that you don't take your instrument. It's just you and the music performing. And so you were required to get up in front of the class and perform certain ear training exercises in conjunction with visual music reading skills. And at one point we were, required to sit down at the piano and take a Bach four-part chorale, which was an expanded score with the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass all on separate lines and in separate clefs. And to play in the left, you would sit down at the piano and play with your right hand one part, and at the teacher's discretion which part that was going to be, and then your left hand would play another part, and then the third part you would sing all at the same time. And so to read and play the piano by reading three different separate clefs at the same time, all different parts moving in contrary motion, just the way Bach chorales are. And that was the type of, and it was random, it wasn't, you couldn't prepare for it, you had to read it. So that type of training was one aspect of training that Juilliard insisted on that all students go through. And the other side of it was the music theory. And so there were, along with studying your instrument, you were required to understand music theory and also what we called our, the ear training class or solfege. And what I want to encourage is that every good musician should be able to read music and should be able to sight read music. And that starts by being able to sight sing. That was the whole point of the solfege classes, that if you can sing it, then you can perform it. And this is not only for classical music. I know that a lot of people, look down on classical music as, reading music doesn't matter anymore because classical music doesn't matter anymore, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and the real truth of it is that any serious music school is going to require their students to read music. And I noticed this. There was the North Texas State 1 O'Clock Lab Jazz Band came through the area, and and they were all students, and they were touring, and they put on a concert. And one of the requirements for their education was that during that concert they would be thrown a chart that they had never seen before, and they were not only going to read it, but they were going to read it for performance. And that was jazz studies. And then Berkeley School of Music requires guitar players to read music. And reading music is essential to being a successful musician. And I know that there have been, very excellent musicians that, particularly in the guitar field, that never read. But it's a similar thing that happened in early jazz music, is that around the time of, let's say, Duke Ellington, a lot of jazz players thought it was dumb to read music. And yet Duke Ellington set a new standard for jazz in that he wanted them to read, and he would actually transcribe what they would improvise. And so there's a correlation between improvisation and written music, written notation. Bach, in my opinion, was fantastic. He improvised full-blown multi-part fugues, and it was like he was composing on the spot with excellence. And then at the same time, while he was composing, it was like he was performing. And so the two worlds of composition and performance were almost the same for him. And that's, in my estimation, the height of musicianship is when you're combining the eye and the ear and the doing in a simultaneous act. So that's in my opinion, is how music, the greatest music, should function. But the purpose of this video is to encourage sight reading, sight singing, and the implementation of the Longi system of solfege.